This is an iPhone 4 screen replacement guide. The first thing you need to do is switch off your iPhone 4. So to power it off, slide the button across and that'll switch it off, of course. Now remove the two pentalobe screws from the back and the bottom. With a pentalobe screwdriver, just remove them and put them to one side. Make sure you know exactly where you put these and organise yourself, because obviously it's not good if you lose these screws, because obviously the case won't be securely placed onto the back of the iPhone. So once you've done that, we're going to remove the rear case. So simply slide it up away from you and that'll be able to be lifted off quite easily. Put that to one side. So now we're going to disconnect the battery. So the first thing you do is take a Phillips screwdriver, and with the cable connector from the battery onto the motherboard, there's a plate which holds it down and is held down with one Phillips screw. Undo that, put it to one side, and then with a plastic opening tool, just gently prise up the metal connector plate from the connector socket on the motherboard. Be careful not to go underneath it, because you can break it very easily. There's a small grounding component which you need to remove and put to one side. Now remove the battery. So some of them you can lift up with the battery flap which is on the side of the battery. Some others you'll have to use a spudger to lever that off gently, but it's easy to do. So now we're going to remove the lower antenna cable using a plastic opening tool. Just flick it off gently and disconnect it from the motherboard, and once that's off, push it to one side so it's out of the way. Now we're going to remove the dock cable connector, which is on the lower left hand corner. So it's held down with two screws, one large one, one small one, and a plate. So remove the two screws first. The Phillips screws, so with the Phillips screwdriver just do that, put them together, remove that flap out of the way because that can get in the way sometimes. Put the screws together and then remove the plate. Now with a plastic opening tool, remove the cable connector cable from the socket on the motherboard. Gently push that to one side. Be careful not to tear it. Now remove the Wi-Fi antenna, which is held down by 5 screws at the top. Again, it's a Phillips screwdriver you'll need for this. There are 5 screws, so just gently loosen them and then put them onto the a place where you know exactly where which screw goes. I put them down into the order at which I take them out, in the pattern in which I take them out, so you know exactly where they go when you replace them later on. So I'm loosening the top one, which is the longest one, and then the right hand one. So just remove that, put it down in the order again where you took it out, Now just going to loosen off the top one a bit more, and again with a pair of tweezers I remove that and put that to one side, and then with the plastic opening tool you can just gently flick off the Wi-Fi antenna plate. Now we're going to remove the motherboard screws. There's one on the bottom left hand corner. They're Phillips screws, so just undo those and put them to one side. The iFixit magnetic project board I use is very handy because it keeps it all in place and stops you losing things and saves a lot of time. So the one halfway up on the right hand side of the motherboard has got a white sticker on it. That is the water indicator, which indicates whether you've had liquid in your iPhone. So just going to remove the camera now with a plastic opening tool. Just prise up the cable connector from the motherboard, and then you're going to need to maneuver out the cable, because on its right hand side there's a little flap which sticks out, which keeps it in place and slides underneath the cable connectors at the top. So just gently maneuver this out. Be a little careful because it's easy to rip cables, so just take your time, be patient, and you'll eventually move it, take it out, and then you'll see be able to put that to one side. There we have it, it's out. Now we're going to disconnect the connectors, the cable connectors from the sockets. There's two large ones, one horizontal and one vertical, so then I'm just doing the horizontal one first, then the next one is the vertically the long one, and then there are three smaller connectors to the side of them. So with a cable connector, just gently prise them up and do this with care and move those out of the way, so because you're going to need to get them out of the way when you remove the motherboard. So there's one screw at the top where you'll need a flathead screwdriver, a small flathead screwdriver. This is an important screw, so just take that out, put it to one side, and then make sure you've taken the SIM card out, because you won't be able to move the motherboard with the SIM card and the SIM card holder in. Which is just, I use a paper clip to do that, but there are special tools you can get to do that. And put your SIM card and SIM card holder to one side. So now you just need to gently maneuver out the motherboard. Be careful because there's a little connector at the top end of it, which is a gold colour, and it's made of gold and is easy to damage. So we're going to remove the vibrator module. It's held down by two screws. It's in the top right hand corner. So one large screw, one small one. So just take those out, put them to one side so you know exactly where they are, and put the vibrator module next to it so you know which screws go with which component. Now we're going to remove the speaker module at the bottom. It's held down by a screw in the bottom right hand corner, and you'll see it has some spring clips on the top end, top side of it, so just make a note of those because you need to move those into the right position later on. So just be careful with the speaker module because you can damage those spring clips on it. So put that to one side, and what we're going to need to do is loosen the screen, the 6 internal screws and 4 corner screws. So just do a half turn on the 6 screws on the side, so 3 on each side. Just do a half turn, don't loosen them entirely because they're difficult to get back in. So just quickly loosen those up, do about a half or a quarter turn, enough just for you to be able to maneuver it out without having to fiddle around putting the screws back in later on. And then just do the screws, the 4 smaller screws in the corner. These are very important ones because they secure the screen in place particularly. Again, these just a Phillips screwdriver you need for this. Undo them, keep the screws together, and then do the final screw and put those screws to one side. Make sure you know exactly where they are, don't lose those. And now we're going to remove the broken screen. So at the opposite end from the home button, put in something like an ISSMO tool or a plastic omni tool and gently prise up the screen. It's glued down at either end, so you'll hear it peeling away. So just be careful, you can see the cables sticking out which you'll need to put through the hole. Make a note of that hole because you'll need to reinsert the new cables from the new screen through that. Gently prise it apart. You hear the glue tearing. Pull it apart slowly, taking care of the home button at the bottom end. Pull it apart. You can see hear the glue tearing, and then when the screen comes off, quite often there's broken glass which is still attached to the chassis, to the phone. You can see here to the left of the home button, you can see the glue, the glass rather, which is still there. You'll need to remove that. I'm using a pair of tweezers. It's important you get rid of this glass because obviously if it's still there you won't be able to put the new screen on. Just be careful of the home button, it's very easy to damage the home button and the cable, so just get that glass off and make sure it's out of the way. It's quite easy to cut yourself on this glass, and then just gently peel it away, And now once that's done, we're going to attach the new screen. So this one has got a red protector case on the rear, so just peel that off. Some of them are blue. Now you can see this is going to slot in back in. So the first thing you need to do is put the cables through the top, through the slots where the previous one was removed. Now this is important to do. Make sure none of the cables are pinching, so you need to make sure every part of the cable comes through, which can do, because it's very easy to get to not push it through far enough or to pinch the cables. That damages the cables, so your screen won't work properly, but also it's very difficult then to put the screw put the new screen back on. So now just put the get the three internal the 6-inch screws on the inside of the chassis, tighten those back up again firmly, don't need to over tighten those, put them back in and screw them in, and that'll secure your screen back in place before you put the 4 corner screws in. Again, so taking those 4 corner screws in, place them in the corners. It can be a little fiddly sometimes. I have actually speeded this up a little. So just place those screws into place and then screw them back into so you connect the screen to the chassis properly, and these are very important because they do hold it firmly in place and stop it moving around. So once you've got those 4 screws into the corner, just put them out, tighten them in firm, so they're firm but not over tight, and then just take your time doing this. So it can be a little fiddly. Sometimes it helps having a little magnetic screwdriver to hold them in place while you screw them in. So just put those in place. The cables can get in the way sometimes. Screw them into place, and then we're going to insert the vibrator module. So take the vibrator module, put it back into place. Take the large screw, put that back into place first. That's on the left hand side. That'll help you secure the vibrator module back into place. So just screw that in first, then put the smaller screw in, make sure the hole's lined up, and then you'll have the vibrator module secured before you go on to the next stage, which is inserting the motherboard. So slot the motherboard back into place, so it can only go back in one way, so you need to maneuver those cable connectors out of the way, make sure it's squarely lined up, and actually before you do this, I've jumped ahead of myself in this video, but you do need to put the speaker module back in, but I'll show you how to do that in a second. But put the motherboard back in, and screw the top right hand corner, screw the flathead screwdriver with the flathead screwdriver, and now connect the cable connectors back on. So start with the 3 small cable connectors, snap them back onto place gently, and then the 2 large ones, the vertical one first and then the horizontal cable connector. Put that back into place. So snap those into place, make sure they're firmly down and properly connected. Now just replace the screws. So do the screw with the white sticker on it. That goes on the right hand side halfway down the motherboard. Put that into place. Again, that just helps obviously make sure it's all in the right place. Now, as I said before, you will actually need to put the speaker module in first. It can go in afterwards, but you'll need to remove this screw, which you'll see a bit later on. So put the speaker module in, then screw this down. So once you've secured this, again, we're actually going to do the camera next. So replace the camera, insert the flap underneath the cable connectors to the right hand side, and then snap the cable connector back onto the motherboard. Make sure that's firmly and squarely in place, and maneuver it so it's square and flat into its socket. Now we're going to replace the Wi-Fi antenna. So just place that back over the screw holes, and then secure it with the long top screw first. Put that in first, and that'll help you line everything else up. Can be a little fiddly, but make sure you get it lined up correctly. And with your Phillips screwdriver, once that's done, secure it into place. And then put the other left-hand screw in next. Put that into place. Again, using a pair of tweezers helps you guide it into place because they're quite fiddly, and then just screw it down. Next, take the next screw on the right hand side, the opposite side, and screw that down into place. Then you'll finish off with the two smaller screws. And it's easy to get these in the wrong place. I actually knocked my screws, which is so I actually have to put them back into the right place in a second, you'll see. So it's quite easy to do it. Even though I've done lots of these, it's very easy to get the screws in the wrong place. So just make sure those screws are in the right place. As you see here, I had to redo this one and put the screw into the right place. Sometimes the screw in the corner can be difficult to get in. So now we're going to place the speaker unit on the bottom end of the unit. So just slide it into place. Make sure the three metal clips tucked in between, not sticking out, but they touch the metal of the chassis from the inside, so they don't overlap. They should be like springs. So push that into place. Make sure those three metal springs, you'll see that the side of the the long side of the speaker unit don't overhang. They're just inside the metal frame. You'll see when you put it inside. Then screw it back into place on the right hand side and then the left hand side, and that final screw secures both the speaker and the motherboard finally into place. So just take your time, make sure these are all firmly placed but screwed in and secure to make sure nothing moves around. So now we're going to connect the lower antenna. So the lower antenna cable has a little slot next to the battery connector. Just snap it into place. Be very careful, these can be a little delicate, but make sure it's securely on. Use a plastic opening tool if necessary to press it home. Now we're going to reconnect the dock cable connector. So that's on the left hand side. Just slide it back into place with your thumb and then connect the cable back onto the motherboard slot. Snap it into place and then put the dock cable connector plate back on, and it's got the one large screw on the right hand side. Just screw that back into place, and the second smaller screwdriver on the left hand side, screw that into place. Now replace the battery. So get the grounding component, place that over so the screw is on the right hand side, the screw holes on the right hand side. Then place the battery in place, line it up so it's square and flush to the side. Then snap the battery connector plate back into place, and get this final screw for the internals to screw the battery plate into place and secure the battery and the cable connector onto the motherboard. So next thing we're going to do is put the SIM card and the SIM card holder back in place. Obviously that's an important component, so it can only go in one way. Slot it in, press it home, and then now we're going to go and put the rear case back on. So just press it so it's slightly ajar, and then move it forward into its slot, and then replace the pentalobe screws into the two holes. So a little fiddly, get your pentalobe screwdriver and secure those and make sure they're going squarely, because they can be going slightly odd angles sometimes. So just put those into place, and then once you've done that, obviously you're going to need to turn the iPhone on to make sure it's working properly, and so put those into place. Screw them down, make sure they're firmly in there but not over tight, and then turn it on, and you'll see the Apple symbol come up and your phone is fixed. Thank you very much for watching.